Hi everyone, this week it's another monitor speaker, this time from JBL, the 4411. Come right back. All right, the JBL 4411, another monitor. The last review I did was a monitor. That was the Yamaha NS1000, a 1000M for monitor. So these were manufactured in the mid 80s, whereas the Yamahas were mid 70s. These are a little smaller, still a good hefty speaker though, at 52 pounds each. They certainly don't feel light. They are, let's see, they're actually very similar to the specs for the Advent. They have an 89 to 90 decibel sensitivity. These were around $1,100 a pair, and 8-ohm speaker, both 8-ohm speakers. So they're, pretty much spec-wise, they're very similar, except for the fact that this is a 3-way and this is the Advent is a 2-way. So the JBL has a 12-inch 128H woofer. It has an LE5 5-inch mid-range and an 044 1-inch dome tweeter. They were fairly popular, I believe. From what I've read, they were fairly popular in the studios of the day. They were from the professional line of JBL, so naturally that would be the clientele they would market to. And over time, they found their way into more consumer hands. In fact, this pair came from someone who was an installer of JBL professional gear. So it seems pretty natural. So I've got them hooked up. Now I'll put them through their paces, compare them to the Advents, which is what I always do. And I'll come back to you very shortly on my thoughts on how they compare. So stick around. All right, so thank you guys for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed the slow-mo there and the up-close shots. It's really a pretty good looking speaker. So on that note, speaking of how they look, I gave them a 15 on the rating, which is 2 points more than the Advent. And I think it's because they have a little bit more modern look. I think you can look at the Advents and think they can be a little dated. These are pretty squared off, and I think they're just clean lines, and the walnut on them is stellar. Don't have a huge footprint. You can use them horizontally or vertically, and again, you can go grillless or with grills. With these grillless, of course, with caution. There are some tempting little fingers that would like to push those dust caps in. So a 15 out against the Advents with a 13. Okay, on sound. Imaging. So what I found with these, and I typically try to always move the speakers and find out what's the widest you can get them before you lose the soundstage. And with these, they are monitor. I guess they were expected to be somewhat close together. And after you get about 9 feet apart, the imaging just falls off. Yeah, there's just really no imaging, to be honest. So you want them a little bit closer together. They're not meant or will not set up into a large room that's, they're very far apart. You're just going to miss out there. But get them 9 feet or closer, and you've got a nice broad soundstage. And it's not just broad, but there's an airiness to it as well. So for that reason, I gave it a little more than the Advent. I gave it a 16 versus the Advent has a 15. So nice on the imaging side. The word airiness, I'm going to use that. This one, I guess, my theme for this speaker. Moving into the low end. Did have an expectation that it would be dig a little bit deeper, and that's because they're about the same cabinet size roughly. But it has a port, and so I was assuming that it would be, a little bit deeper. But I didn't find that, to be honest. I felt they were very on par with the Advent. Advent does a great job, in the low end. So they didn't go any lower, and I gave them the same score of 14. So no difference there. On to the mid-range. Now, I think I said this when I was reviewing the Yamahas, but when I have a three-way speaker and you've got a dedicated mid, unlike the Advents, which it's a two-way, there's no mid-range there. My thinking is, and I think it's natural, is that you're going to have a lot there because you've got a dedicated speaker all to the mid-range. And I got that. I got that whole sensation with the JBL. The LE5 mid-range just sort of stood out to me, not obviously in a weird way where it seemed like, it was not seamlessly integrating with the tweeter and the woofer, but in a good way where the mids and everything, the voicing was out there and distinct. And I think it might be so far the best mid-range I've heard as far as how it's blended in here. Not just the speaker alone, but the combination of how it's crossed over and blended in with the other drivers. So for me, it was pretty outstanding. I thought that it's what I think I wanted to hear from the Yamahas, but didn't, essentially. So for that reason, I ended up giving it an 18, whereas the Advents get a 16. So a 2-point difference. So that's how much better I like them. And I've talked about the Advents before. I really enjoy the mid-range on it, despite it not having a dedicated mid-range. It's pretty phenomenal. So another couple of points. Okay, on to the highs. So the highs here, nice and clean. I can't say anything negative about it. I enjoyed it. It was lively and exciting, and again, the airiness was there, and it was everything again I thought that I expected to hear from the Yamahas, but didn't. And these brought it to the table. I was a little hesitant at first because I have heard some JBLs that I thought were the high end was a little fatiguing. Didn't have that here. I mean, it was lively, it was exciting, it was not bright, but very crisp. And everything in combination just worked very well. And so, for that, I give it another point as well. I give it a 17 versus the Advent, has a 16. So in total, that's an 80 points. That's 80 points for the JBL and the 74 points for the Advent, which is what I rated them at. And it's a great speaker. I can highly recommend this. Now, obviously, it needs to be appropriate for the room. If you have a big room, you're going to need a bigger speaker if you're going to want imaging. But as far as a monitor, it kicks butt. This is a great speaker. If you find a pair, and I was going to say at first if you're a JBL fan, but I honestly, I'm not a JBL fan. I'm a speaker fan. And but I think if you have been hesitant for a JBL, some JBLs can be argumentatively, liked or very much disliked. And I really think that the majority of people who hear these will like them. So I don't think they will be something to argue over. I think most people will just tend to say, wow, that's just a good sounding speaker. The combination of the drivers and how they've been crossed over and blended, I think most people would certainly appreciate it. So that's my review of the 4411. If you find a pair, get them. Probably will need refoaming. This pair did. And this pair, by the way, came from someone who was an installer of JBL professional gear. So, he had access to, I guess, any professional gear of the JBL speakers. He chose this one. And I can see why. It's a very good speaker. So hope you enjoyed that. If you got a set, let me know. I'm sure there's JBL fans out there. Chime in the conversation. Let me know if you've had these, others, how you compared these to others, all that kind of stuff. I certainly appreciate it. It's fun to have some back and forth. Coming up soon, I have some other monitors. Not sure if I'll be able to get them in here, but because they're in the house. And might do those. But anyway, stick around. As always, thank you so much for chiming in to the conversation and listening in to my videos here. So subscribe if you want to keep up, and see you soon.